Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Park. Great to see you.
And, we were talking about this just before we hit record. You being one of the founders over there, the fourth employee at HubSpot, you are good pals with my pal, Dan Tyre.
A wonderful human being to know.
Yeah,
Like, just if you are ever down on your life, call up Dan Tyre. It's better than therapy.
it is. I was introduced to him through a mutual friend, Greg Head, who is in the tech world. You may well know
Nice.
Greg
Yeah, I
too.
know Greg. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent guy. And one day he says, "You got to meet this Dan Tyre dude." And we went over to the Henry, a little restaurant down off of Camelback Road in Phoenix. And that had to have been 15 years ago. And he couldn't have been nicer. He was like he had known me for
Of course.
15 years.
Insane. Like, it's just like a born salesman. He was my first sales hire at HubSpot, which was weird because I had no experience going into that role in sales, and Dan had like decades. So he was very patient with me in our coaching. I suppose like I had something to teach with it to him about the internet, which was, believe it or not, fairly new back then.
Right.
And he had a lot to teach me about sales, but just one of those guys that like, no matter if the person was like cleaning out the office space or the parking attendant, absolute best friends with them. And it was always so funny because at the time, I mean, we're like less than 10 people sitting in a room, and so we're just the engineers are coding right here and you're on sales calls here. It's just everyone's in the same room. And I remember every call Dan had is like, oh, Park, where are you? Oh, I'm out in Golden, Colorado. And they're like, really? Where? It's like, Central Street. Really? Where? Well, like Nick's Pizza. It's like, yeah, I lived above Nick's Pizza. I mean, it was always these like crazy connections that he would make. So it was a blast to take that journey with him.
Yeah. And you were their very first chief revenue officer at HubSpot. And of course,
Well, it
HubSpot
doesn't
is
mean anything when there's 4 employees, Park.
well, you
But
were
yes,
chief
yes,
at
the
least.
CRO through the IPO, correct. It took about 9 years.
But I mean, you guys started what is now very much of a legacy brand. Everybody knows of HubSpot. Lots and lots of folks use it. What did you learn in those early years working as a CRO there that has led you to what you're doing today with Stage Two
Oh
Capital?
my gosh, there's too much to cover across all that. I mean, I would say philosophically, I don't have a plan anymore because as I look back on the last 2 decades and I think about the things on my resume that people respect, HubSpot, going to sales, writing 2 books, being a professor at Harvard, starting a venture capital firm. I never intended in any of those. I never pursued a single one of those. So I think if you want to get like philosophical, Park, like, um, I think one thing I learned is you can have a plan, but certainly be open minded to the opportunities that are presented to you because those could be the most important journeys. And I would say on a more tactical level, I was very lucky to be chosen by our co-founder Brian Halligan, who had at that point a multi-decade career in sales, largely at PTC, and he had the foresight to know at that moment in 2006 that sales as a function was about to be completely revolutionized from this discipline that was largely like fancy looking people in suits that were good at golf and steak dinners to a very data driven science. And he essentially ignored his Rolodex of phenomenal sales leaders and picked me, a kid at MIT, to be his sales leader. And that
A
was
kid
like,
from MIT. I mean, you usually come out of there as an engineer, not a
I
sales
know.
leader.
Studied engineering undergrad. Like my
Yeah.
whole existence was quant. And that's what he wanted to do. And I would say that set a foundation for what I learned, which was to help amongst many of my peers evolve sales from something that we perceived as magic and art to something on par with the science that we see in, say, finance and economics. And so that's been a big part of my life work the last 25 years.
So this is really interesting. You come out of MIT, and of course, you're driven by a logic, reason-driven brain there, right? I mean, that is what MIT is all about. And yet you come out into the sales role, and then you have all these other accomplishments, and you say that you just kind of follow this path. And what's interesting to me about it as a universe is I was just on another guy's podcast 2 hours ago, and he was talking about this very same thing. He's a guy, it's called the Agency Story Podcast. He works with ad agencies, and he calls it wayward walking. And it's kind of the exact same thing you're talking about here too, is not, you kind of have an idea of where you're going, but then you go off on this wayward walk and let the universe and pay attention to the hints it gives you, and it will lead you to some pretty amazing places.
I love that. I resonate so much with that, and this can get a little wonky and
Mhm.
spiritual, which I don't wanna scare people off, but yeah, I mean, I'll say it in that way first, which is I am a spiritual person. I'm a deacon at my church, but I study all of the religions from, Jewish to Muslim to Buddhism to Hindu. I love them. I love to see the commonalities around them. And through those journeys, I have grown conviction in the meaning of life, which is to reflect continuously on the unique gifts that you've been given as a human and find a way to deploy those unique gifts to make the world a better place. And you can't really go wrong when you do that. And that may or may not lead to wealth or power or um, like whatever we pursue at a surface level, but it will lead to happiness. And I think that has like uncovered like my journey. And I would say if you get back to like when I'm talking to my students at Harvard and the business school, where they're gonna if you talk like that, they're like, oh my gosh, like little weirded out. But it's basically, hey, listen, have your plan. We're all type A people. But to your point and your buddy's point there, Park, just be open minded to the things that just land on your lap when you aren't asking the question, because that could be the most important answer. And I was lucky to do that in many different versions throughout my career.
Yeah. And this led you to Stage Two Capital and your new book, The Science of Scaling. So, how do those two worlds come together?
Yeah, a couple steps in between. So if I may tell a story, Park,
Well, it is the business of story.
it's 9 years into HubSpot. We just do the IPO. It's a blessed, amazing experience. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm done. Like, I'm just going to take a year off and reflect on life and figure out. I'll probably do another head of sales journey. I don't know. And as I'm going through, like, I gave a lot of months notice just because you have to prepare for that stuff. And during that time, without knowing, well, I wrote this book called The Sales Acceleration Formula back then. And that book did surprisingly well. I donated all the proceeds of that book to this awesome org called build.org that helps kids in tough cities in high school. And it was the reason that came about was that back then you may remember Jill Conrath, who was probably one of the most famous sales authors of that generation and still
Mhm.
is. And we had breakfast together, and she wrote down on a piece of paper, The Art and Science of Sales by Jill Conrath and Mark Roberge. And she's like, I want to write this book with you. And I was like, Jill, I didn't even clear 500 on my verbal SATs. Like I scored perfect on the math, but which is why I got an MIT, but like I can't write. And she's like, "Come on, like write a chapter. We'll bring it to my publisher." So I did, and she was like, "This is awesome." She's like, "This is your own book. You have to write your own book, and then we'll write the next one together." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Jill, now you got me writing two books." So I write this book, and I asked one of the professors at Harvard to write a blurb on the back because it was right in our backyard. We started HubSpot out of Boston, so the it was a big name in Boston, especially at the time. And so the Harvard professors would say, I'm doing a class in sales. Can you come over and do a speech? I'm like, all right. So I asked one of them to do a blurb, and he read it and agreed. And I took him to lunch to thank him. And he was like, hey, I've seen you in the classroom and now I've seen your writing. We're going through a pretty big shift at the school. Everybody is kind of The demand for banking and consulting is going down and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. So we're trying to like evolve our faculty and classes. Would you ever consider joining the faculty full time and building and teaching the sales courses? And I was like, you didn't let me in as a student, so it's like, anyway, so like I ended up, doing that full time for 5 years, which was a much better thing than sitting around on the beach or golfing. Right. So it's just like, it was cool. I learned to be a good professor at a great place to learn to be a professor. And through that, I got to continue to express my passion in life, which is entrepreneurship. So a lot of the VCs that I got to work with during HubSpot, like Sequoia and General Catalyst, would do these investments at the early stage, be like, Mark, can you help these folks out and build the sales team? So I was like, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do like 50 of these. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go like to the office a day a week, listen to calls, interview reps, talk to customers. So I did that. I did that for like 5 years. I worked deeply with like 15 companies. One ended up doing an IPO. One sold for $1 billion. A couple were priced at $1 billion. A bunch of bankruptcies. It's like the game we play. It's like Major League hitting. If you're great, you still strike out most of the time. Like it's just the
Mhm.
game we play. And it gave me this pattern recognition experience of like, why did some of these be an IPO and why did some of these go bankrupt? And then that led to starting Stage 2 Capital with a guy, Jay Poe from Bessemer, who approached me with the idea. And it led to more data points. And then I just did a speech in 2019 at SaaStr. And every time I speak at SaaStr every year, I do something new. And this speech happened, it just was about like how to use data, like how to use a rigorous framework to know when to scale revenue and how fast, just like we accrue and recognize revenue. It didn't exist and it's crazy and it leads to a lot of unnecessary failure. Half the entrepreneurs go too fast too early, half the entrepreneurs wait too long and go too slow. And we need to know when to go. So I did the speech, it went viral, and then Stanford asked me to write it up. And I'm giving all the proceeds to mental health, which is hugely motivating. So yeah, that's the story, Park.
Wow. So I got to ask you a question that I was asked on that show a little bit earlier today. It was the final question of my interview. And since you brought it up, you said you've got these Harvard students that are going from bankers and finance folks into entrepreneurs. So my question to you is, are entrepreneurs born or built?
Wow, that's a good one. I think they're built, but I'm hesitant. I know for a fact that salespeople are built and not born. That can be taught because I teach them. I teach all of them, whether they're from Africa or Asia or Europe or South America, wherever, men, women, whatever, or ex-military, ex whatever.
You teach them how
So
to sell, which
how
is
to sell?
influence and persuasion, right? But
No.
entrepreneur, isn't there a different
Yeah,
chemistry to
totally different.
entrepreneurship? Yeah.
Totally different. I think it's one we have to unpack. I've never really unpacked that with anyone. This is kind of a cool thing. I will tell you, when I was at MIT, they were studying it in 2005, and they did come to a conclusion of two attributes that correlate with successful entrepreneurs, which I think has probably changed because entrepreneurship has evolved so much in the last 20 years. But the two they came up with that correlated were, number one, your family were entrepreneurs, which at the time made sense because it was a very unusual career. And I remember graduating with one of my good buddies at MIT who was actually a doctor. He was 27-year-old. He was a ophthalmologist. His dad was a doctor. His grandfather was a doctor. His great grandfather was a doctor. He was from Turkey. When his dad met me at graduation, he threw a meatball in my face. He was pissed. You're polluting my son with these ideas of entrepreneurship. He's got this noble career. His son went off and made like $20 million the next year with a startup. I mean, it was awesome. So anyway, like I can understand at the time why that made sense. I don't know if that correlates anymore. And the other one was more qualitative, which you have to be a paranoid optimist. You have to like get up in the morning and face bankruptcy every day and have the optimism to get through it, but also the paranoia to see what else is around the corner. That's what they said.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think everybody can have a contribution, but I think it depends. Like, if you're talking like first person, open the bank account founder, yeah, you're right. There's probably some attributes you're born with, and there's a lot of rewiring that would probably take psychology to get there. But if you join as the fourth employee, are you an entrepreneur? Yeah, I don't know. Like, so there's different, like, I think there's different roles that I'd still consider. And I think there are many people out there that can add significant value to that journey.
Yeah, because it was in my experience running my own ad agency, and we weren't huge, we were 20 some people. And I would always encourage every person from the account executive to the copywriter to the art director, you name it, to be entrepreneurial about what they're doing. How is this going to build the client's business? Think quote unquote outside the box. And I can tell you through in the 20 years that I ran my agency, I would be lucky if I could get a quarter of them to think
Mm,
entrepreneurially. And then I thought, well,
yes.
maybe it's my hiring practices because they were all very, very good advertising people. Don't get me wrong. But when it came down to entrepreneurial insights and some guts and so forth, I found them very few and far between. And then I talked to other agency principals about it, and they said the same thing. Said, don't worry about that. Hire for writing, hire for art direction. Don't hire for entrepreneurship unless they're going to be your CRO or, someone who's going to help really drive the business.
You're probably right, honestly, Park. Um, I'm probably partially living in a little bit of a bubble in the sense that I teach founder selling at HBS. So it naturally attracts the students that are interested in that. And also like the people that get in there are of a very high level of IQ, right?
Mhm.
So like it's just not representative of the entire population. So I think you're probably right. As I kind of think about like people I meet around the neighborhood, amazing people, unbelievably successful, but like would be on terrible founders. And
Mhm.
so there's probably some form of wiring and motivation that's necessary. At the same time, I do think there's probably more ways to teach it than you think, but there probably are some philosophical wirings that are required to be successful.
Okay. Well, let's do a little thought experiment around
Yeah.
your work. All right.
Okay.
So let's just say I am a founder. I have a great product because I know people like it.
Hmm.
I am attracting actually really good talent because they believe in my mission and what I'm doing. And I've actually even gotten my brand story dialed in. So it's making sense to the world. It's making sense to me. It's motivating my people, but I'm not growing. I'm not scaling. What is one of the first things that you see with what appears someone who should be a successful founder are not enjoying that success yet?
Okay. So the direct answer to that question is in the book, but it isn't really like a major principle of the book. Where the book is addressing when should you scale and how fast. And what you're talking about is someone's trying to scale and they're struggling. And most of the time, and I'm going to answer this within the context of a company that's scaling through human sales, which like we know that not all companies do that. Like if you're like a dating site, you don't usually go door to door and try to get people to sign up to Bumble. Like you're usually doing like advertising, right? Whereas the principles are similar, but I need to just talk about the selling part first. And this is actually right in the heart of one of the most popular classes at the school that I teach is called founder selling, to teach founders to do that. And most of these folks, they're like product, they're technical, whatever, and they're trying to bring something to market. And then I ask them like, okay, well, what is your sales process? And they show me a slide deck of 25 slides. And it's a beautiful story about why they started the company and how awesome the product is and the features and benefits and the case studies they have. And they're like, this is my sales process. I book meetings and I take people through these presentations. And I'm like, all right, well, like how you had one yesterday? Like, yeah. I'm like, how'd it go? I was like, it was great. I got through all 27 slides. And then I show them this study. I'm like, okay, let's look at this analysis here. This is a AI analysis done in the last 3 years of 150,000 first sales meetings from like 800 companies. And it shows you that the top performing salespeople in the industry speak less than half the time in the first call. And the worst performing salespeople in the industry speak over 75% of the time on the first call. And I'll be like, all right, let's reflect on your meeting yesterday. Now analyze it. Where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm like the worst. I'm selling like the worst salesperson. And I'm like, well, what do you think they're doing if they're not talking? And they're like asking questions. I'm like, about what? So we go through this discussion to help them see that whether you read like, gap selling that was written 5 years ago, or how to influence friends and win, whatever that one is from 150 years ago, written by Dale Carnegie. The underlying message is the same. The people who are successful at sales are not provocative negotiator manipulators. They're more like therapists. They know how to show up to a first meeting and ask you open-ended questions that often get personal to understand the way you're wired, to understand the problem that you are facing and prioritizing, to understand how you think you should solve it, to understand how important it is to solve. And then they decide if they can help you. And if they can, they tailor the pitch so you understand how they can help you. That is how you sell. And it is so different than how 99% of technical founders think. I'm going through this right now with a very successful company. I mean, even like one of my buddies, his name is John McNeil. John's a super successful guy and extremely humble, which is hard to find those two together. And one of his cool roles was he was the number 2 at Tesla for Elon Musk. He actually met him at Sheryl Sandberg's husband's wake, where he was friends with Sheryl. He went to Harvard with Sheryl, actually. Or he went to undergrad, I think, with Sheryl. And she's like, I need to introduce you to someone that needs your help. And she brought him over and introduced him to Elon Musk. And Elon's like, yeah, I'm not hitting the sales targets for Tesla. And he's like, can you help me? And John was like, I don't know. So he's like, give me 2 weeks. So John went around to all these different dealerships and watched how they were selling. And he watched a salesperson at Tesla. A mom walked in to test drive a car with her 5-year-old son. And they got in, and the sales guy showed them how it goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. And they were freaking out. And they did not get that sale. And it was because Elon said, just put the friggin' passenger in the car and let the car sell itself. And it was such a beautiful metaphor and example of the typical product mentality, that the product sells itself. And yet the backdrop of every great sales discipline is about understanding the perspective of the buyer and tailoring the pitch to their needs.
Wow.
That's my story, Park.
No, and you're exactly right. And it is sort of it's the story everybody hears, but very few people do it.
Right.
Why is that? Why do salespeople
it's
show
hard.
up and just talk your head off?
Do you know how stressful it is to show up in a complete stranger's office? You begged them for a meeting. They want to get the hell out of there. Do you know how stressful it is to say, why did you take this meeting? Tell me more about that. Have you tried to solve that before? How did you try? What would the ideal solution be like? Every question you ask, you're like, you think they're going to turn around and be like, shut up and show me it. It's so hard. As opposed to show up and be like, here's our company. This is when we were founded. This is what the product does. Do you want to buy? It's so much easier.
Yeah. Did you learn this back at HubSpot, those early days? Dan Tyer's there. You bring him in. He's coaching you up a little bit on sales. I mean, were you making these same mistakes? in the early.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was terrible. And I had the good fortune that my dad is an awesome salesperson and coach. And so I just got lucky. I never intended to be in there. So part of it was just growing up hearing him, and part of it was just like over dinner talking. And he grew up way back when selling Cutco knives, which I way back
Oh,
when,
yeah.
like a lot of people don't. That was a great sales training program. They were very aligned with Sandler training, which we teach at Harvard. Really great methodology. Dave Matson, their CEO, is an LP in my fund, and yeah, I was very fortunate to uh, have time with him, and also just a ton of other great advisors that I surrounded myself to learn this craft.
Yeah. So you said that my first question was a small portion of your book. Let's talk about the greater thesis in this book. When to scale and how fast?
Right. Which
What are some of the
was
things we got to look at?
Yeah, which was the conclusion I saw in the difference between the IPOs and the bankruptcies. And it's kind of like I can picture with each company the board meeting and being in there when they made the decision, and embarrassing at how the decision is made. Literally, like, oh, here's an $8 million check, and then go hire as many salespeople as you can. Right. And like, again, like half the people do it too slow, too late. Half the people do it too fast, too early. But like, there's just like no rigor around it. And some of these VCs, who are the best investors in the history of the world, advise people on this having no experience on it. Right. So that's kind of a little broken in the ecosystem. And that's something I learned from your analysis, Park, that you thankfully gave to me, that we'll talk about later, that I probably don't make the connection toward some of the enhancements that I think need to be made to venture capital and board meetings. And this is one of them. So the
Well, real quick, can I ask you
yeah,
something on
good.
that? Because I've got a disconnect that you made happen in my brain. You're talking with VCs. You're saying that these are some of the best investors in the world, which means they're making money. They're not broke. They know how to invest. They know how to make money, and yet they just throw money at the problem. Just here's $8 million. Go hire a bunch of salespeople and go. And that seems like a complete disconnect from someone who's really
Sure.
brilliant with money. Why is
Thank you
that?
for bringing that out. That's great. Because when I mean they're great investors, it's because great investors will do 500 hours of diligence on a potential investment and say no and brag about it. I don't like that is so hard to do. And they just know how, like, they do the 99 diligence calls and they do the 100th. You know what I mean? Like, they're just great, and they can see where the future's going. They can judge people. They're just like unbelievable investors, and that's how a lot of these VCs are. But then for some reason, they go into the boardroom and then someone says, "Who should I hire as my sales leader?" And they talk about it just as confidently. And the founder listens. And their perception of that advice is based on a great investment they made 8 years ago in a completely different industry in a completely different time. This is what I call the inappropriate cut and paste. So there's something broken with the VC community where there's the investor and then there's the board member. And for some reason, we've made those the same role, and they're not. So that needs to be fixed. And so yeah, getting back to your question, um, there are two things that need to be accomplished sequentially to be ready to scale. And they are product market fit and then go to market fit. Product market fit is fairly well known. And when I do speeches to founders or do my class, it's a very common answer. When are you ready to scale? When I have product market fit. What's crazy is then I ask 50 people in the room to write down what product market fit is, and I get 50 different answers. So we have this amazing term that Eric Ries and the Lean Startup invented 20 years ago that has changed the way we do entrepreneurship for the better. But no one knows how to measure it. And in fact, most of the answers I get are 50 customers, 1 million in revenue, or 1,000 inbound leads. And so I have to like say, okay, interesting. You have 1,000 inbound leads, you have 50 customers. What if people like buy it and then don't use the product? Do you have product market fit? And they're like, no. I'm like, so like, but then they'll be like, but I'll just figure out why they don't use it and make it better and then get product market fit. And I'll be like, well, how do you know when you have? I was like, when they keep using it. I'm like, exactly. So this isn't about whether they buy it. This isn't about whether they reach out to you. This is about whether they see value and retain. So the best measurement of product market fit is customer retention because they bought it, they used it, and they reused it. So that's a first orientation of the journey is your first North Star metric is not a revenue goal, it's a value creation goal as measured by retention. And the book talks about how to, unfortunately, retention is a lagging indicator that we won't know for a year. So the book talks about how to extract that back to a lead indicator that you can measure in the first week or month. And we can talk about that if you want, called the lead indicator retention. That's step one. And all you've proven at product market fit is if you go next month and acquire 20 new customers, they're going to see value. What you haven't proven is that you can acquire and serve those customers profitably, and that's what go-to-market fit is.
And
Now
how
you
long
want
does
it
that normally take?
all over the place.
Yeah.
A day, a week, a month, a year, all over the place. It's just like it's a sequence of luck in the context of your business, and then there's also like what kind of level of product market fit and go to market fit do you need to see before you scale, and that just depends on the competitive pressure and what I call blitz scale pressure of your category. Because like if I have two companies I'll talk about. One company is in the AI customer support category. It's super competitive. There's 17 companies that have raised $100 million. They have to take risks and go earlier. They measure product market fit and go to market fit, but they probably like move on product market fit when say 40% of the customers are hitting that target. Because we got to build the plane while we're flying it. We can't wait. I have another company that is in the, they sell software to airports, okay, called AeroCloud. And that is a not competitive category. There's two $20 billion incumbents from the 70s, 5-year contracts, 6-month RFP processes, no tolerance for bugs. You have a bug in your customer support software, no one dies. You have a bug in your airport software, that is bad. So they have a very high bar on our measurement of product market fit before we graduate to go to market fit and further, right? So like how long these takes is a complicated answer that's discussed in the book based on the context that I just outlined. But zooming out, I talk about product market fit, then go to market fit, where product market fit is measured by retention in the long term and a lead indicator of retention in the short term. And go to market fit is about your ability to serve and to acquire and serve those customers profitably as measured by unit economics. And we walk through the algebra to extract those unit economics to early signals. So I apologize if that was a mouthful, but as simple as I could say it, and it's all outlined
No,
in the book.
it's all good. And
Okay.
does one happen before the other? Go to market fit before
Yeah,
product market fit?
you have to do it that way. That's
Yeah, that's
another
what I
part of
was
the
thinking.
principles because first off, it's really hard to invent anything and deliver the value. So you have to throw all your resources at it. There's one of the companies that I was working with early on that I mentioned during that tenure was a company called Drift. Drift was founded by David Cancel and Elias Torres. I'd known David for a long time, but he happened to end up as our chief product officer at HubSpot, and Elias was our head of engineering. And they left and started Drift. And David did such a good job during the product market fit phase. When they acquired a customer, David flew to the office as founder to personally set them up and onboard them. And that customer was paying him $50 a month. But the great Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, says, do unscalable things early. And David exhibited that beautifully because it is friggin' hard to build and invent a product and get the customer to see the value. You have to throw everything in the kitchen sink at that. But once you've proven it, then you move on to go to market fit to codify it If you do go to market fit first, you will likely optimize the go to market on the wrong product market combination.
Mhm.
Okay. So they need to be done sequentially.
Yeah, so, like, with our story cycle genie, which, I sent you your brand narrative strategy there, what I have been doing, it totally unscalable, but whenever we get a new customer, in fact, I just did it yesterday with one, I'll jump on a 2-hour Zoom with them. So, "Let's onboard you. Let's get you going here. Here, do this. Let's build out that initial brand story. Let me show you then where this leads," and I'll give them some branding advice as we go, as they're developing their initial brand brain, but it takes a lot of effort to get them on board. But we learn a ton in
Exactly.
that process
That's a
too.
sales process.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you don't measure the profitability of your demo activity like directly, like because you're not generating revenue. So the post sale, the sale does not end when the customer signs and gives you money. The CRM should be set up so that stage 4 is set up, stage 5 is engaged, and stage 6 is they renew and refer. That's
Mhm.
the end of the sales process, right? So you're doing an awesome job with that.
Do I have this right with HubSpot? I've never used HubSpot. I've never been a customer of it. I've looked at it once upon a time. Someone told me in the early days, and maybe it's still happening, that if you sign up for HubSpot, that you have to go through an onboarding process with them. And then someone even told me you actually have to pay for that onboarding because they want to make sure that you are serious about the product, and then they bring their full effort in making sure that you get onboarded properly. Is that correct?
Yes, during my 10 years, that was absolutely correct. There's probably exceptions to it, not because of a pullback from the philosophy, but only because there were certain products that you could become a customer with that were intentionally done as PLG products where you could adopt yourself. So, but yes, during the marketing software, that was a huge move. A lot of the VCs thought we were crazy. But it wasn't a product where there was a low time and effort to value. Like one of our colleague friends at MIT was Drew Houston, who went off and started Dropbox, and Dharmesh was very enviable of his go-to-market motion because it was literally click here, back up your device, and then start paying us. And he's
Mhm.
like, "Can we do that?" And we tried. Unfortunately, our value prop was if you blog for 6 months, your leads will go up. It wasn't like a low time and effort to value. So we had to design things to let the customer prove to us that they were going to put the skin in the game because we didn't want to sign up people and waste their money.
Yeah, and then even charge them for the onboarding.
For sure. That's the skin
Yeah,
in the game, partially,
that's
right?
wild.
This is the work. You're going to show up, you're going to pay for it
Yeah.
up
Have you
front.
have you followed Alberto Savoya's work in his book, The Right It?
No, tell me
It's
about it.
it's just fantastic. So he was one of the first innovation engineers at Google, moved on from there, Stanford, and he's got this fantastic book that my co-creator, Sean Schroeder, said, "Park, you ought to read this." It's called The Right It, and he talks about prototyping, where you don't build a prototype and get it out there. You do a whole bunch of really inexpensive activities early on to see if what you got is the right market fit or
Nice.
product market fit for that matter. And he said the same thing that you just said right there. They have to have skin in the game in 3 different ways. Number 1, they have to be willing to invest their time into whatever you're doing so that they've got that. Number 2, they may or may not be willing to invest money. Get at least time, but if you can get them to invest in, the startup prototype, that's even better. And number 3, to invest reputation. Like, are you willing to talk about this product, that you like it or not? And when we launched the Genie, we did all 3. We got people to
Perfect.
invest the time. They paid us $500 as a beta tester, and then I would work with them in the development of their brand story. So they would get me as well as the Genie, but then they would give us these amazing testimonials on it. And it kind of goes back to and I think maybe even that came from the HubSpot conversation when Sean was saying, well, I believe HubSpot charges people to onboard them,
That's so
they have
funny. Yeah.
skin in the game of what you're
Right.
talking about.
Yep. Yeah, I think
So,
that's brilliant. I mean, I don't know. One of the things you learn when you're like a professor is to like pick apart like, does it apply in all cases and its law? And I
mhm.
think that is a beautiful insight that 99% of people should follow. I mean, I guess, like, can I try to pick it apart? Like a home security system, if it's set up and I'm paying, if it never goes off, I'm still happy. Like, I don't necessarily have skin in the game. Perhaps McAfee running on my PC. I suppose I can make an argument that when a bug gets detected, I click in and see it. So, yeah, it's a hard one to poke at, but I love it. I love the philosophy.
Yeah, well, it's a really, really great book. If you get a chance, I'd skim
Cool.
through it, check it
Definitely.
out. So what did you think of what we sent over to
Mhm.
you relative to the Genie
It was
Findings?
awesome. I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, I was preparing for our thing and I saw your note and I had a very busy morning and you're like, "Can you please read this before?" And it was 12 pages and I was like, "Oh, man." But it was
I know.
awesome. And I sent it to our marketing team and I sent it to my co-founder and I it inspired a lot of cool thought. I think one of the things that it took out, I forget the section, it was kinda like there's a section where it's like where it does make sense, and then there's a section of, like, the devil's advocate part kind of, and
Mhm.
it's because like, with Stage 2 Capital, it was about Stage 2 Capital and the science of scaling, and the unique thing about our VC is we are backed by 1,000 sales and marketing leaders across tech, what we think are the best. The head of sales at, OpenAI and Anthropic and Databricks and Snowflake and Zoom and GitHub and Salesforce and Workday and all the companies heard of. And so it it pointed out that like that we're very involved, but how active could 1,000 people be? That was
Yeah.
one of the points. And I was like, dude, that's of course. Of course someone would. So it made me think that we need to write a lot more about the different programs we use to take that massive, set of investors and create real value every day with our portfolio. And so that was cool.
Yeah, I was
Um,
right there in the positioning vulnerabilities. It said
yes,
the quote active involvement and quote credibility gap. What does 1,000 executives involved actually mean in practice?
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So like I mean there's some we set up these very intimate advisory boards. We do these very intimate workshops on like pricing or account-based marketing or whatever. So like we've been at it for 8 years and create that value, but it's not popping to
Mhm.
the analysis of everything. And the other one was the opportunity on the storytelling and the messaging around why venture needs to change and adapt, which we've talked a little bit about and you've inspired. That like I think a lot of the things we stand for, it's not like the great VCs who invested in HubSpot and my friends, they're like as I said, they're brilliant people. Absolutely brilliant. But there's just something systematically wrong with the ecosystem that the same person that does that wonderful investment is also the same person that gives massive operational strategic advice, yet they've never run a company.
Mhm. They know how to make money. They just
Yeah.
don't know how to run a company to make
Yeah.
money.
And the
Yeah.
founder listens because they're 28 and someone just handed you a $30 million check. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Exactly right. The positioning statement it came up with, and again, Mark, this was just looking at your Stage 2 Capital website and saying it's kinda like, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, how's my brand showing up for all?" And it said, "Stage 2 Capital is the only venture firm structurally built around 1,000 plus senior go-to-market executives, transforming product market fit into repeatable, scalable revenue through systematic operational expertise embedded at every stage of growth." A lot of words there, but
That
how
is a
did that
lot.
land with you? This was, its
Too
initial
confusing.
blush.
Too confusing.
Yeah. What would you say your position statement is?
Bringing capital and go-to-market expertise to your boardroom conversation. Does that get it closer?
And what
Should
does
I be
that
using your if,
No,
but,
no, not
the
necessarily, and
okay.
in fact, I was just gonna go into the genie while you were thinking about that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pull up your story. There it is, and I'm gonna tell it, right now. The position statement is too complicated and confusing.
Yes.
Uh Provide me with 3 simpler, more compelling options. All right. I just plug it's running its thing. We can keep chatting. It may think on this for a minute or
Nice.
two, but that's the beauty of the Genie is you go in there and then you iterate. You don't have to answer any questions at the beginning of it. It just says, here's how you're showing up. And
Right,
here's
that's
what I
great.
believe your position statement is, your UVP and so forth. And then you go in and say, okay, I think you're close, but I think it's too, it's too complex. So it's already given me three. Shall I read all
Good.
three of them
That's
to you?
awesome. Yeah, because 'cause we're literally going through a redesign now, so it'd be good.
All right. So option A, it calls it the community angle. The only VC firm run and backed by 1,000 go-to-market leaders, purpose-built to scale B2B software companies.
Much better. Clean.
Option 2, the founder outcome angle. Stage 2 Capital gives B2B founders capital, a proven framework, and 1,000 plus go-to-market operators who are invested in their success. So that's more functional, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And
I
then,
like it. I'm trying to think which one I like more.
well, option C,
Yep.
the transformation angle. The venture firm where B2B founders go from product market fit to scalable revenue with 1,000 plus go to market leaders invested in the outcome.
Yeah. Wow. Those are tough 3 choices. I feel like I have to, like, look at them. I feel like
Hmm.
one has a slight edge, but I it's hard because I don't hate any of them. Like,
I'll send them
it's
over
something
to
I have
you
to yeah,
after
I have
this.
to, like,
Yeah.
stare at it, yeah.
But that's the beauty of
Plus,
the Genie.
I'm not the best at that, so, like, I need to go, like, go talk to people and,
Get your
like, figure out
marketing
that yeah,
team looking at.
exactly. Yeah.
But that's how it iterates with you. So
Yeah,
it's,
sick.
I don't, I think artful or artificial intelligence is like the worst brand name going. I believe it's artful intelligence if you use it right. And that's what we've
I
tried to
like
build
that.
with the Genie. Yeah.
Very cool.
So,
Super
yeah.
valuable.
Well, thank you. Now, one last question that's been burning in me for you is that you're obviously extraordinarily successful. You do a lot of really fun, cool things. You teach at Harvard. Why did you write the book? Why do you take time to go on shows like mine when it seems like you could be doing lots of other things?
Well, I think part of it gets back to, like, my wiring as, like, just constantly reflecting on the unique gifts that I've been blessed at this moment, because they do change, and how I can deploy those to create value for society in the unique way that I'm supposed to. And that's just, how I've just been called to do right now. And I think the other thing that I'd love a chance to talk to that about, which is related to your question, Park, is the cause behind the book, which for this one, as I mentioned, 100% of the proceeds are being donated to mental health.
Mhm.
And there's two reasons for that, a personal one and an observation one. The personal one is mental health has played a huge part in my life. I've been a caretaker directly multiple times and a patient. And I can say that most people can't because there's still a stigma associated with it. I think when we interview someone and find out they survived cancer, we elevate our perception of them. But if we interview someone and find out that they struggle with and recover from a mental health disease, we have concerns. And both are the same. They're genetic, oftentimes, just a disease. So there's still a stigma. And I've been blessed with certain aspects of my resume that society values where I can probably be a little more braver and transparent than most can. They have to suffer in silence. And I just feel that's a unique gift for me right now, a blessing that I need to act on. And then the second reason is um, for the tech community. I do think that there's 100 times more effort, talent, and capital going into building AI than there is in understanding how society should adapt to a post AI world. And I think in every major technical shift, we came out the other side advanced as a society, but there were scars along the way. And I think we're stacking up to have some really massive scars. And as a tech community, I don't think we can delegate this responsibility to Washington or economists. Like they're just not close enough to it. We have to balance building this stuff with helping society adequately adapt And I think we all just need to do our little thing. And right now, this is my little thing, and I'll do more later.
It sounds like a big thing. And where can
Thank you.
people find your book?
On Amazon, Science to Scaling, Mark Roberge. Appreciate it. 100% are doing. I've already written some. It's been number one for most of its existence on the last couple months. So good checks floating over to mental health. And if you want to chat with me, I'm usually pretty active on LinkedIn. We can chat about it.
Cool. And stage two capital. Who are you looking to drive to stage two capital? Are you looking for more investors, more founders, more people to help?
Yeah, all the above. We're not currently raising. We just finished our fourth fund raise in February. We have a smaller entity that is open if people want to get involved, but we are deploying capital. We have a lot of fresh to capital, and we invest in anything all over the world
Hmm.
that sells through sales teams or product led growth. A lot of AI, a lot of software, and everything from like the pre-seed, no code written yet, all the way up to the Series A. So, would love to hear from you. You can go to our website. You can contact me on LinkedIn.
Well, I would love to contribute to your success too. So as you are funding these founders out there, and if they've already got websites up, send them over to the Genie and have them do the free brand story grader. And it's going to give them a grade from A plus to F minus and a 14-point storytelling assessment. So they can do that for any founders, for any of your students there that want to be entrepreneurs and they want to see how do you actually tell a story. Send them over to storycyclegenie.ai and we'll give them a complete free brand story grade.
I love that park and have already benefited from it. So, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks.